The alarms blared, a screaming, relentless pulse that vibrated through the steel deck plates of the USS Nightingale. Red emergency lights bathed the narrow corridors in a hellish glow, strobing across my face, turning the sweat on my brow into beads of blood. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the siren's wail. I ran, my high-heeled navy boots clattering on the metal flooring. A sound that was both foreign and intimately familiar. The pencil skirt, a dark, constricting navy fabric, hugged my hips and thighs, forcing me into shorter, more deliberate strides. My long brown hair, tied back in a neat bun, had come partially loose, and strands of it whipped across my face with every panicked breath. For a fleeting second, I caught my reflection in the polished steel of a bulkhead. A woman stared back at me. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear, her lips parted. She had a delicate jawline, soft cheeks, and a graceful curve to her neck that flowed down to the fitted collar of her naval blouse. I saw the gentle swell of my chest beneath the crisp white fabric, the narrowness of my waist, the soft flare of my hips. It was me, Julia. But a ghost whispered in my mind, a phantom of a memory. Joey. How did this happen? How did the boy who joined the Navy to find his manhood end up here? A woman in the heart of a sinking submarine. A year ago, I was Joey, a confused, heartbroken kid trying to figure out his place in the world. Now I was this. Before another thought could form, another siren screamed. Louder this time. Hannah's voice, sharp and urgent, cut through the chaos from a comms speaker overhead. Julia, get to the control room. Now. Everything. It all started the day you stepped onto this boat. You have to remember. The world tilted, the red lights swirled into a vortex, and everything went black. 1 year earlier, the world felt grey. Not just the overcast sky spitting a miserable drizzle onto the sprawling parking lot of the Oakwood Mall, but my entire existence. The colors had been drained out of it the day Marissa left. I just don't see a future with you. Joey, she'd said, her words clinical, precise, and utterly devastating. She might as well have ripped my heart out and stomped on it right there on her parents' floral welcome mat. At 18, I was a certified failure, high school diploma in hand, no college plans on the horizon, and a freshly terminated job at the local burger joint because I'd accidentally mixed up the salt and sugar dispensers. My dad just sighed and shook his head when I told him, that familiar look of disappointment settling into the lines around his eyes. I was adrift, a piece of human driftwood bobbing in a sea of my own mediocrity. That's why I was at the mall, not to shop, but to just exist. To be around the noise and motion of other people's lives, hoping some of it might rub off on me. I was slouched on a bench near the food court, nursing a lukewarm soda and watching a group of guys my age laughing, their arms slung around their girlfriends. A fresh wave of self-pity washed over me. That used to be me. Lost in thought. The voice was crisp, confident, and startlingly close. I looked up and my breath caught. Standing before me was a woman in a U.S. Navy uniform. It was perfectly pressed, the white top stark against the black skirt, the lines sharp and authoritative. She had blonde hair pulled back into a severe but elegant bun, and her eyes were a piercing blue. An officer's insignia gleamed on her collar. Her name tag read Recruiter Ellen Reed. Something like that, I mumbled, feeling my cheeks flush. She smiled, a disarming, brilliant smile that seemed to light up the dreary mall. I get it, it's that time in life, right, figuring out the next step. It can be a real beast. She didn't talk down to me. She spoke to me like an equal, like she understood. Her name was Ellen, and she was, without a doubt, the most compelling person I had ever met. She sat down on the bench, not too close, giving me space, and started talking. It wasn't a sales pitch. It was a conversation. She asked about my hobbies, what I was passionate about. I told her about my childhood obsession with submarines, how I'd built countless models and read every book I could find on naval warfare. Her eyes lit up. "No kidding, you're a bubblehead at heart. We need guys like you." She painted a picture, not of war and combat, but of opportunity, a steady paycheck, something I desperately needed, the GI Bill, a golden ticket to a college education my family could never afford, a chance to see the world, to escape the suffocating confines of my hometown. And then she delivered the masterstroke. "We have this new program," she said, her voice dropping slightly, making it sound exclusive, special. "The Nightingale Project. It's a state-of-the-art experimental submarine. The tech is light years ahead of anything else in the fleet. They're hand-picking the crew. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for someone with your interest." My heart started to beat faster. A new start. A chance to become someone else. Someone better. Someone Marissa wouldn't have left. The image of myself in a crisp uniform, a man with purpose and direction, was intoxicating. The grey fog in my mind began to part. And for the first time in months, I saw a sliver of blue sky. Before I knew it, I was standing at the temporary recruitment station she'd set up near the department store, a pen in my hand. The forms were a blur of official-looking text. Ellen's voice was a reassuring murmur in my ear, guiding me. "This is it. Joey," she said softly. "This is the first day of the rest of your life." In that emotionally charged, vulnerable moment, I believed her. I signed my name on the dotted line, my signature a shaky, hopeful scrawl. I was joining the Navy. I was going to be a man. The brochure had shown smiling, determined faces. The reality was a splash of ice-cold water to the face, followed by a kick in the gut for good measure. Naval Station Great Lakes wasn't a place for new beginnings. It was a factory designed to dismantle you, piece by piece, and rebuild you into something uniform, obedient, and uncomplaining. From the moment I stepped off the bus, the world became a symphony of shouting. Chief petty officers, with voices like gravel grinders, screamed at us for breathing too loud, for looking at them, for not looking at them. The air was thick with the smell of floor wax, sweat, and fear. I quickly discovered I was not cut out for this. Physically, I was on the lower end of the spectrum, while other recruits were hoisting their gear like it was nothing. I struggled. During the morning runs, my lungs burned, my sides ached, and I always seemed to be trailing at the back of the pack, earning me the special, focused rage of our instructors. "Come on, ladies, my grandmother can run faster than you, and she's dead our lead instructor, Chief Williams," would bellow, his face inches from mine, his spit flecking my cheek. The days blurred into a grueling routine. Wake up before dawn to the shriek of a whistle. Make your bed so tight you could bounce a quarter off it. Physical training until your muscles screamed for mercy. Classes on naval history and protocol where staying awake was a battle in itself. Marching, and more marching. The isolation was the worst part. I felt like I was the only one struggling. The weak link in a chain of hardened steel. The other guys in my barracks formed quick friendships, bonding over the shared misery. I remained on the periphery. The quiet kid who couldn't keep up. There were moments I wanted to quit, to just lie down in the mud during a crawl exercise and give up. The memory of Marissa's disappointed face, of my father's tired sigh, it was a bitter pill. But then I'd think of Ellen's promise, the Nightingale, the chance to be part of something special. This crucible, this hell, was the price of admission. Giving up meant going back to being the failure I was before, and that was a fate I couldn't accept. So, I pushed until my body was a single, throbbing ache. I learned to shut down the part of my brain that screamed in protest. I focused on the small victories, passing a room inspection, finishing a run without walking, successfully disassembling and reassembling my rifle. Slowly, painfully. I was being broken down, but I held on to the hope that the person they rebuilt would be stronger. I was starting my life over, one agonizing, sweat-drenched day at a time. Graduation day was surreal. We stood in formation, our dress-white uniforms blindingly bright under the Illinois sun. The shouting had been replaced by speeches and applause from visiting families. I scanned the crowd, knowing my parents weren't there. Too far to travel for a ceremony. My dad had said on the phone. Though I knew it was more about the cost and the inconvenience. A familiar pang of loneliness hit me, but I pushed it down. I wasn't that kid anymore. I had made it. After the ceremony, we were herded into a large hall to receive our first official assignments. This was the moment of truth. The culmination of all those miserable weeks. Men were shouting out ship names and naval bases, their voices filled with excitement and trepidation. Japan, San Diego, Norfolk. My name was finally called, Seaman Apprentice Joey Miller. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. The officer behind the desk, a stern-faced woman with her hair in a tight bun, looked down at a file, then up at me over her glasses. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, curiosity, confusion. "Miller," she said, her voice flat. "You've been assigned to the USS Nightingale. Report to Naval Submarine Base, New London, in 1 week." A ripple of murmurs went through the guys waiting behind me. The Nightingale. Even here, rumors about the top-secret experimental sub had circulated. It was a ghost, a myth. To be assigned to it as a fresh recruit was unheard of. I felt a surge of pride so powerful, it almost made me dizzy. Ellen had come through. This was it. My chance to be part of the elite. The best of the best. I couldn't stop the grin from spreading across my face. All the pain, the sweat, the humiliation of boot camp, it had all been worth it. I was heading to a submarine. My childhood dream, and not just any sub, but the most advanced vessel in the entire Navy. As I walked away, clutching my orders, I didn't notice the strange looks from some of the other officers. I didn't register the whispers, or the fact that no one else was assigned to the Nightingale. All I could think about was the future. Bright, shiny, and full of purpose. I had no idea that I wasn't just walking toward a new assignment. I was walking into a world so bizarre, so utterly life-altering, that the Joey who stood there in his dress whites would soon cease to exist entirely. The USS Nightingale didn't look like any submarine I had ever seen in books. Moored at a private, heavily guarded pier in New London, its hull was a sleek, matte black, with angles that seemed designed to defy physics. It was beautiful and intimidating. I walked up the gangplank, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, my orders clutched in a sweaty hand. A female officer at the top greeted me, her expression a mixture of surprise and something else. Annoyance. "Seaman Apprentice Miller reporting for duty." "Ma'am," I said, snapping a salute. She returned it half-heartedly. "We weren't expecting you until 1400. "My orders said, for 900, ma'am," I corrected gently. She just stared at me. It was then that I started to notice. The sailor who took my duffel bag was a woman. The 2 technicians, walking past, carrying a toolkit, were women. The person giving orders over the intercom had a distinctly female voice. I looked around the docking area. Every single person in a Navy uniform was a woman, 100%. A cold, weird feeling started to creep up my spine. This wasn't right. The Navy was integrated. Sure, but a whole submarine crew, an entire experimental vessel. It didn't make sense. The looks I was getting weren't just curious. They were hostile. I was an anomaly, a glitch in the system. As I was led down the hatch into the sub's interior, every head I passed snapped in my direction. Eyes wide, followed by whispers. I felt like a zoo animal, some strange creature that had wandered into the wrong enclosure. I was assigned a bunk in a small cramped berthing area shared with 3 other sailors. My living space consisted of a coffin-sized bed, a rack, they called it, and a small locker for my personal effects. My duffel bag with my civilian clothes was stowed away. and I was handed a standard-issue metal case. "Your uniforms," the petty officer, a woman with tired eyes and a permanent scowl, grunted. "You're on watch in 2 hours. Be in the proper uniform of the day. No exceptions." She left without another word. I could feel the eyes of my new bunkmates on me. I tried a weak smile. "Hey, I'm Joey." One of them, a redhead with a constellation of freckles across her nose, just snorted and turned back to her book. The other two completely ignored me. Okay. So this was going to be tough. Shaking off the cold reception, I focused on the task at hand. I placed the metal case on my rack and popped the latches. A sense of relief washed over me. Finally. Something familiar. Something that would make me feel like I belonged. I lifted the lid. And my world stopped. There, neatly folded, was not the standard-issue male sailor's uniform. Staring back at me was a dark navy blue pencil skirt, tailored and form-fitting. Beside it was a crisp white blouse, but it was cut differently, with darts at the chest and a softer collar. There was a small, feminine version of the sailor's cap, a pair of sheer, dark pantyhose, and a white, sleeveless garment that looked suspiciously like a sports bra. Tucked in the corner was a pair of glossy black shoes, not sturdy work boots, but delicate, low-heeled Mary Janes, to complete the horror show. There was a pair of small white dress gloves and a small bottle of what smelled distinctly like vanilla-scented perfume. My blood ran cold. This was a mistake. A massive, humiliating mistake. They'd given me a female officer's uniform kit. My mind raced. I had to fix this, and fast. I scrambled out of the small berthing area, my heart hammering in my chest, and nearly collided with a sailor coming the other way. She was taller than the others, with kind eyes and a cascade of dark hair tied back in a practical ponytail. She steadied me with a hand on my arm. "Whoa there, where's the fire?" "My uniform. It's wrong." I stammered, my voice cracking. "They gave me the wrong one. It's for a woman." She peered over my shoulder into my bunk area, her eyes landing on the open case. Her expression didn't show the surprise I expected. Instead, she gave me a look that was a mix of pity and weary resignation. She was the sailor from the bunk above mine. "Look," she said, her voice low and conspiratorial. "There are no mistakes on the Nightingale. Everything is deliberate." "But I can't wear that," I whispered, horrified. "I'm a man." She leaned in closer. Her name tag reading Hannah. "Listen to me. Joey. This is Captain Bryant's ship. The rules are different here. If you're not in the proper uniform for your watch-in..." She glanced at the wall clock. 1 hour and 45 minutes. She won't just be angry. She will make your life a living hell. She'll tear you apart, piece by piece, in front of the entire crew. So, my advice: if you want to survive your first day, you'll wear what's in that box. Her words hung in the air, heavy and absolute. She wasn't joking. The fear of being disciplined, of being singled out by a terrifying captain on my very first day, warred with the profound, gut-wrenching humiliation of what I was being asked to do. I looked from Hannah's serious face back to the contents of the case. The silky fabric of the skirt seemed to mock me. Chapter 6. The Terrifying Fit. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely undo the buttons on my own shirt. The small berthing area suddenly felt like a stage, even though my bunkmates were pointedly ignoring me. I could feel their awareness, their silent judgment, pressing in on me from all sides. Hannah's warning echoed in my ears. "She will tear you apart." Taking a shaky breath, I stripped down to my boxer shorts. The first item was the sports bra. The fabric was soft and stretchy, but putting it on felt like a surrender. It was snug against my chest, compressing the sparse muscle there, creating a smoother, flatter line that was unnervingly different. Next were the pantyhose. I'd never touched a pair in my life. The delicate, sheer material felt alien against my calloused fingers. I fumbled with them, nearly ripping the fragile fabric as I struggled to pull them up my legs. They clung to my skin, a second, silky layer that felt both constricting and strangely sleek. It was as if they were squeezing the very last vestiges of my masculinity into submission. My legs, covered in dark hair, looked ridiculous through the sheer nylon. Then came the blouse. It was tailored to curve. As I buttoned it up, it pulled tight across my shoulders, but nipped in at my waist. The soft cotton felt smooth against my skin, a far cry from the starchy, boxy shirts of my male uniform. Finally, the skirt. I held it in my hands for a long moment, the dark navy wool feeling heavy with dread. This was the point of no return. I stepped into it and pulled it up over my hips. It settled perfectly at my natural waist. I reached back, my fingers fumbling with the zipper. As I pulled it up, I felt a gentle, firm pressure as the fabric cinched around me. Hugging my waist and flaring out slightly over my hips, it created a curve that wasn't there before. I stood there, motionless, my breath caught in my throat. I didn't need a mirror to know how I looked. I could feel it, the way the fabric draped, the unfamiliar sensation of air on my lower legs, the snug fit around my torso. The uniform wasn't just on me. It fit me. It fit me perfectly. A hot, shameful blush crept up my neck and flooded my face. Why? I whispered to the silent, humming bulkhead. Why does it fit so perfectly? It was a terrifying question with no immediate answer. I slipped my feet into the black Mary Jane shoes. They were snug, but not painful. I took a tentative step and nearly stumbled. Unused to the slight heel and the rigid sole, my entire posture had to change just to stay balanced. I was a parody, a joke, a man forced into a woman's clothes. But as I stood there, awash in humiliation and fear, a tiny, insidious thought wormed its way into my brain. The smooth feel of the pantyhose against my skin wasn't entirely unpleasant. The way the skirt defined my waist was interesting. It was a flicker of a feeling so alien and unwelcome that I immediately crushed it, burying it under a fresh wave of self-loathing. But it had been there. Walking through the narrow corridors of the Nightingale was the most difficult thing I had ever done. Every footstep in the ridiculous Mary Janes felt like a thunderclap. Every head turned. The whispers followed me like a pack of wolves. Some of the women openly smirked. Others just stared with cold, undisguised contempt. I kept my eyes fixed on the deck in front of me, my face burning, my hands clenched into tight fists at my bows. The control room was a hive of quiet, efficient activity, bathed in the cool blue and green glow of countless screens and monitors. At the center of it all, standing before the main viewport like a queen surveying her domain, was a woman who radiated an aura of absolute authority. Captain Donna Bryant was beautiful in a way that was sharp and dangerous. She had severe, dark hair cut into a short, immaculate bob, high cheekbones, and eyes the color of steel. Her uniform was so perfectly starched it looked like it could cut glass. She didn't turn when I entered, but I knew she was aware of me. The entire room had gone silent. "Seaman Apprentice Miller," she said, her voice calm and cold, not bothering to look at me. "You are late." "My apologies, Captain," I managed to squeak out, my voice an octave higher than usual. She finally turned, her steel-grey eyes raking over me from head to toe. Her gaze was clinical, dissecting. It lingered on the fit of the skirt, the slight awkwardness of my stance in the unfamiliar shoes. A faint, cruel smile touched the corner of her lips. "I was informed that a clerical error resulted in a male sailor being assigned to my vessel," she said, her voice loud enough for the entire control room to hear. "My vessel, my all-female crew, a project years in the making, designed to prove the superior efficiency and cohesion of a single-gender unit. And now, I have you, a boy, a disruption, a variable I did not plan for." My face was on fire. I wanted the deck to open up and swallow me whole. "On my ship, Mr. Miller," she continued, stepping closer, her voice dropping to a menacing purr. "We have standards. We have uniformity. You will adhere to the regulations of this vessel without question. That includes the prescribed uniform. Am I clear?" Yes, Captain, I choked out. You are an unwelcome presence here. Miller, a flaw in an otherwise perfect system. You will have to work twice as hard as everyone else just to justify the oxygen you consume. Do not for 1 second think you are one of us. You are an experiment. My experiment now. We will see if you can be integrated, or if you will break, dismissed. With that, she turned her back on me. The conversation over. The message had been delivered, not just to me, but to the entire crew. I was not one of them. I was a problem to be managed, an object of contempt. As I scurried out of the control room, the feeling of total, crushing isolation was absolute. I was alone, adrift in a sea of women who hated me, trapped in a steel tube miles beneath the ocean's surface. That evening, I lay in my rack, staring up at the metal underside of the bunk above me, feeling the gentle thrum of the submarine moving through the deep. I hadn't eaten. I couldn't face the mess hall, couldn't bear another 100 pairs of eyes on me. I had just changed back into my own clothes, a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt, but the feeling of the skirt and pantyhose lingered on my skin like a phantom limb. You can't just hide in here forever. It was Hannah's voice, soft and low from the bunk above. Go away, I mumbled. Not a chance. She said I heard her shift, and a moment later she was sitting on the edge of my rack, looking at me with those surprisingly kind eyes. Look, what the captain did today was brutal, but it's how she operates. She's all about control and uniformity. She wants me to quit, I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. She wants to humiliate me until I break. Probably, Hannah admitted with a shrug, but you're not going to let her, are you? How can I not? I have to walk around in that. I look like a freak. Right now, you do, she said, and the blunt honesty of it stung. Because you're fighting it. You're walking around like a man in a woman's clothes. You're broadcasting your misery and your awkwardness. And that just makes you a bigger target. If you want to survive on this boat, you have to do more than just wear the uniform. You have to blend in. I stared at her, confused. Blend in. How am I supposed to do that? She gave me a small, knowing smile. Blending in means looking the part. It means acting the part. It means, for all intents and purposes, looking like one of us. She leaned a little closer. You have a choice, Joey. You can fight this and be miserable, and eventually get washed out in the most humiliating way possible. Or, you can adapt. I can help you. I didn't know what to say. She was the only person who had shown me a shred of kindness since I'd come aboard, but what she was suggesting, it was unthinkable. Why would you help me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Because I know what it's like to be the outsider, she said, her gaze distant for a moment. And because, frankly, watching you stumble around in those shoes is just painful. So, what's it going to be? Are you going to let them break you, or are you going to learn the rules of the game? Desperation is a powerful motivator. I thought about the alternative returning home a failure. Having been kicked out of the Navy for not being able to handle wearing a skirt. The humiliation of that was somehow worse than the humiliation of my current situation. Okay, I breathed. What do I have to do? Hannah's smile widened. Good. First lesson starts tomorrow morning. 0500, and it begins with your legs. The next morning, before the rest of the crew was awake, Hannah led me to the showers, a small pouch in her hand. First things first, she said, pulling out a disposable pink razor and a can of scented shaving cream. The leg hair has to go. It looks ridiculous under the pantyhose. I balked. Shave my legs. No way. That's a step too far. Is it, or is it just hair? She countered, her voice patient but firm. It's part of the uniform. Joey, a clean, uniform appearance, that's all. Defeated. I sat on a bench in the small, sterile room. Hannah showed me how to apply the cream, how to hold the razor at the right angle. The first stroke was the weirdest sensation. The razor glided up my shin, and behind it, a strip of pale, smooth skin appeared, a stark contrast to the rest of my hairy leg. It felt profoundly wrong, like I was erasing a part of myself, but I kept going. When I was done, my legs felt bizarrely naked. When I stood up, the cool air of the room touched my skin in a way I had never felt before. It was a strange, sensitive, tingling feeling. After I dried off, Hannah handed me a bottle of lotion, and this, every day, it keeps the skin from getting irritated and makes the pantyhose slide on easier. The lotion was coconut and hibiscus scented. As I rubbed it in, the feminine fragrance enveloped me. My skin felt incredibly soft and smooth to the touch. Back in our berthing, she took out the uniform. Now, let's work on how you carry yourself. She had me put on the skirt and blouse, but this time she was watching with a critical eye. You're standing like a guy. Your shoulders are back. Your feet are apart. That's not how this uniform is meant to be worn. She physically adjusted me, turning my shoulders slightly, pushing my hips forward a tiny bit. Soften your posture, she instructed. Bring your feet closer together. Then came the shoes, the dreaded Mary Janes. You're walking flat-footed, clumping around. She said, you need to walk more on the balls of your feet, shorter steps. Let your hips move a little. It's not a march. It's a walk. For the next hour, I paced back and forth in our tiny compartment, Hannah giving constant corrections. Softer, lighter. Don't swing your arms so much. Stop looking at your feet. It were maddeningly difficult. My ankles wobbled. I felt like a puppet with its strings tangled. Then she made me practice sitting. You can't sit with your legs apart in a skirt. Joey, you have to cross them. Ankles or knees, your choice. But they have to be together. I sat on my rack, awkwardly trying to cross my legs. It felt unnatural, constricting. Throughout the entire process, a war was raging inside me. One part of me was screaming in humiliation, rebelling against every feminizing instruction. But another, quieter part of me was just observing. It noted the pleasant slide of the lotion on my smooth skin. It registered that when I followed Hannah's instructions, the uniform did seem to hang better. It felt a strange, terrifying flicker of something that wasn't entirely negative. When I finally took a few steps without wobbling, my hips swaying just a little in the way she'd shown me, the feeling was so foreign, so deeply unsettling. I felt my face flush with a confusing mix of shame and something else I couldn't yet name. Okay, time for phase 2, Hannah announced a few days later, holding up a small black bag. If you're going to look the part, you have to go all the way. My stomach dropped. I knew what was in the bag. No, absolutely not. Hannah, shaving my legs was one thing, but makeup, I'm not doing that. It's not about looking pretty, she said, sitting me down in front of the small mirror screwed to the wall of our berthing. It's about softening the edges. You have a strong jawline, thick eyebrows, male features. A little bit of makeup will help you blend in, make you less jarring to look at in the uniform. It makes you less of a target. Her logic was, as always, infuriatingly sound. She wasn't asking me to become a woman, she was teaching me camouflage. She started with a concealer stick, dabbing it under my eyes. The sensation was cool and creamy. This just evens out your skin tone, she murmured, her fingers gently blending it in. Then came an eyebrow pencil, just filling them in a little, giving them a bit more of an arch. See, it frames your eyes. Next was the eyeliner. My eyes watered as she carefully drew a thin black line along my upper lash line. It's subtle, she promised. Just makes your eyes look bigger. She finished with a swipe of mascara on my eyelashes and a dab of clear, shiny lip gloss. Nothing too dramatic. Just enough. Then she turned me to face the mirror. The person looking back at me was me, but not me. The changes were small, subtle. but their cumulative effect was staggering. The hard edges of my face seemed to have melted away. My eyes, framed by the dark liner and mascara, looked larger, more expressive. My lips had a soft sheen. My skin looked smoother, clearer. It was still my face, but it was a softer, gentler, undeniably more feminine version of it. I touched my cheek, my fingers tracing the line of my jaw. The face in the mirror didn't look like a man in makeup. It looked strangely natural. The transformation was both horrifying and mesmerizing. I couldn't look away. For the first time, I didn't see a boy being forced into a costume. I saw the faint, ghostly outline of someone else. Someone I didn't know. The day came when Hannah declared I was ready for a public test run. It was lunchtime. The mess hall would be packed. My stomach was in knots. It was one thing to practice in the relative privacy of our quarters. It was another to walk into a room full of the women who despised me, wearing makeup and trying to walk in a way that still felt like a performance. "Just remember what we practiced," Hannah said, giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Head up, shoulders relaxed, small steps, you've got this." We walked down the corridor. I focused on my breathing, on trying to make my movements fluid and not stiff with terror. As we entered the mess hall, the usual chatter died down for a second. The silence was deafening. Every eye turned to me. I could feel their gazes dissecting me, looking for flaws, for something to mock. Some of the women from the engineering department had a bet going. I could hear them whispering, $10 says he trips before he gets his food." I clenched my jaw and kept walking, my eyes fixed on the serving line. I focused on placing one Mary Jane-clad foot in front of the other, on keeping my balance, on letting my hips sway, just that tiny, tiny bit. I made it to the line without stumbling. A small victory, but it felt monumental. As I was getting my food, a sailor named Chloe, a notoriously sharp-tongued electronics technician, slid up next to me. I braced myself for an insult. "You know, Miller," she said, her voice laced with amusement as she looked me up and down. "I have to admit, you're starting to fill out that skirt." She winked. "Looking at you in that getup, it's kinda cute, actually." My entire body went rigid. My face erupted in a blush so hot, I was sure it was visible from across the room. I stammered something incoherent and practically fled to a table in the corner. My heart pounding. It was a tease, a joke meant to throw me off balance. But it had worked in a way she couldn't have intended. No one had ever called me cute before. The word, combined with the context, sent a jolt of something utterly confusing through me. It was embarrassing. Yes, but underneath the embarrassment was a strange, unfamiliar warmth. A tiny part of me, a part I hated myself for, had liked it. The days turned into weeks. The routine that had once been a source of profound torture slowly began to feel normal. I no longer had to consciously think about how to walk or sit. The movements were becoming second nature. The morning ritual of shaving my legs and applying the light makeup Hannah had taught me was just part of getting ready for the day, like brushing my teeth. The open hostility from the crew had softened, replaced by a sort of grudging acceptance, peppered with the occasional teasing comment like Chloe's. The betting pools on my stumbles had dried up. I was no longer the clumsy, miserable freak who had first come aboard. I was just there, a strange, feminine fixture on the submarine. Something was shifting inside me. Too. It was subtle, a slow tide changing deep beneath the surface. I started to care about my appearance in a way I never had as a boy. I found myself checking my reflection in polished surfaces, tucking a stray strand of hair back into place, reapplying my lip gloss after a meal. I started to enjoy the feeling of the soft fabrics against my smooth skin. I started to like the vanilla scent of my issued perfume. When a crewmate complimented the way my blouse fit, I felt that same confusing warmth I'd felt with Chloe's comment. I found myself craving it. I was safer this way, blending in. Being one of the girls meant I wasn't a target. It was a shield. But the shield was becoming a second skin. Sometimes. Late at night, I would lie in my rack and try to remember what it felt like to be Joey the angry, lost boy who had joined the Navy. And I found, to my alarm, that the memory was growing fainter, the edges blurring, the lines were getting harder to distinguish. The change was gradual. It started with small invitations. A group of sailors would be gathered in the recreation room after their shift, painting each other's nails, and one of them would look over at me and say, "Hey, Miller, you want in? This color would look good on you." The first time it happened, I'd stammered a refusal. The second time, I hesitated. The third time, I sat down and let a woman named Sarah paint my fingernails a subtle, glossy nude. It felt incredibly intimate. Soon, I was part of their private rituals. They taught me how to braid my hair, which was starting to get long enough to pull back. They shared skincare tips and complained about the dry, recycled air on the sub. They talked about their boyfriends back home, their family problems, their dreams. They started talking to me not as a man they were forced to tolerate, but as one of them. A confidant, a girlfriend. I learned to laugh with them, my laugh a little higher and softer than it used to be. I found myself smiling more, a genuine, unforced smile. The constant weight of anxiety and humiliation I'd carried for weeks had finally lifted. In this strange, upside-down world, surrounded by women, wearing a skirt and nail polish, I felt a sense of belonging I had never felt before in my life. I was part of a tribe. It was a strange and intoxicating feeling. The summons came over the ship's intercom. "Seaman, Apprentice Miller, report to the captain's stateroom, immediately." The old fear returned instantly. My stomach twisted into a knot. I had done my best to stay off Captain Bryant's radar. To be a ghost, a summons to her private quarters could only mean I had failed, as I stood outside her door. I smoothed down my skirt with trembling hands and took a deep breath. Enter. Captain Bryant was seated at her desk, her expression as unreadable as ever. She gestured to the chair opposite her. I sat, perching on the edge, my back ramrod straight. "Your performance reports have been adequate," she began, her voice crisp. "You have integrated with the crew to a satisfactory degree. However, your official designation remains a clerical issue and a disruption to the uniformity of my command." She opened a drawer and pulled out a small, rectangular object, a new name tag. She slid it across the desk toward me. I looked down. Engraved on the black plastic in stark white letters was a single name, Julia. "From this moment forward, you are no longer Seaman Apprentice Joey Miller," the captain declared, her steel-grey eyes locking onto mine. "On this vessel, in all official and unofficial capacities. Your name is Julia. You are Seaman Apprentice Julia Miller. Update your records. Inform the crew. I will not have a male name spoken on my ship. Is that understood?" I stared at the name tag, Julia. It was a pretty name, a soft name. It was everything I wasn't. And yet, it felt right. It felt like the final piece of a puzzle I didn't even know I was solving. A wave of emotion so powerful it took my breath away washed over me. It wasn't fear or shame. It was a strange, profound sense of relief, of happiness. I looked up at Captain Bryant, and for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of her. I felt a bizarre sense of gratitude. "Yes, Captain," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Thank you." When I picked up the name tag, my fingers closed around it. It felt like coming home. From that day on, no one called me Joey. The name was erased, buried at sea. I was Julia. And every time I heard it, every time I said it, it felt more real. The berthing quarters on a submarine are designed for maximum efficiency, not comfort. The racks were stacked 3 high, with barely enough room to sit up. Privacy was a concept that didn't exist. My rack was directly beneath Hannah's, and the proximity had fostered a unique sisterly bond between us. One evening, after a long shift, I was sitting on the edge of my rack, trying to rub lotion on my back, contorting my arm into an awkward angle. The recycled air was hell on my skin, leaving it dry and itchy. "Here, let me." Hannah's voice came from above. She swung her legs down and sat beside me, taking the bottle from my hand. "Turn around." I hesitated for a split second before complying. Turning my back to her, she squeezed a generous amount of the coconut-scented lotion into her palm, and then, her hands were on my back. Her touch was warm and gentle. Her fingers worked the lotion into my skin, her palms sliding over my shoulder blades, down my spine. It was a simple, practical act of kindness, but it felt earth-shatteringly intimate. It was a non-sexual touch, but the simple sensation of her skin on mine sent a shiver through my entire body. My heart started beating faster, a heavy rhythmic thumping in my chest. I closed my eyes, my breath catching in my throat. In that small, shared space, with the low hum of the submarine all around us, her gentle touch was a profound comfort. It was a moment of quiet connection, of simple human warmth that I hadn't realized how much I was starving for. She wasn't treating me like a man or a project, she was just caring for her friend. And as Julia, I could accept that care, could lean into that warmth, in a way Joey never could have. The feeling was new, and frightening, and wonderful all at once. The transformation was no longer just about clothes and makeup. My body itself was starting to change. At first, I thought I was imagining it. My skin, thanks to a religious routine of lotions and moisturizers, was undeniably softer, smoother to the touch. The hard calluses on my hands had faded. But it was more than that. When I looked in the mirror, my reflection seemed different, softer. The muscle mass I had painstakingly built in boot camp seemed to be melting away. Replaced by a softer layer, my waist seemed to be tapering, creating a more defined, curved silhouette. My hips, I could have sworn, had a fuller, rounder shape to them. Then came the strangest and most alarming change. My chest had started to ache, a dull, persistent throb. When I looked down, I could see a definite swelling around my nipples. They were tender to the touch, and there was a small firm bud of tissue forming underneath. I was developing breasts. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't part of the camouflage. This was real, physical change. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Was it the food? The recycled air? The stress? I would stand in front of the mirror for long stretches, wearing just my sports bra and underwear, examining the subtle shifts in my anatomy. I should have been horrified. A part of me was... The ghost of Joey screamed that this was a nightmare, but another part of me, the part that was becoming Julia, couldn't deny what she saw. The curves were pleasing, and the softer lines were beautiful. I was scared of the changes, but I was also undeniably, terrifyingly captivated by them. The woman in the mirror was becoming less of an illusion and more of a reality every single day. The chest pains grew worse, and the swelling became more pronounced. I could no longer deny it. Terrified, I made an appointment with the ship's doctor, a kind, motherly woman named Dr. Evans. I sat awkwardly on the examination table in a thin paper gown. Explaining my symptoms, I tried to sound casual, but my voice trembled. She listened patiently, her expression neutral. She did a thorough examination, pressing gently on my chest, drawing blood, and asking a series of questions about my diet and energy levels. A few days later, she called me back to her office. "Julia, I have your test results," she said, her tone serious. She motioned for me to sit. "Your hormone levels are highly unusual. Your testosterone is significantly below the normal male range, practically non-existent, and your estrogen levels are extremely high, consistent with that of a healthy female." I just stared at her, my mind refusing to process the words. "This hormonal imbalance explains the changes you've been experiencing," she continued gently. "The loss of muscle mass, the skin texture, the gynecomastia, the breast development. Your body is, for all intents and purposes, feminizing itself. "How is that possible?" I whispered. She shook her head. "I'm not sure. It's a spontaneous and radical endocrine system failure. I've never seen anything like it, but the progression is clear. Given the trajectory, these changes will continue. Your body is essentially at war with itself." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "There are treatments, hormone therapies to try and reverse it. Though in a case this advanced, success is not guaranteed. Or, there is another option. We could help the transition along. Surgically, we can remove the now redundant male organs. It would alleviate the biological conflict your body is undergoing. It would be a way to harmonize your physical self with the hormonal reality." She was talking about castration, about a final, irreversible step. The room felt like it was closing in on me. The ghost of Joey was screaming, a primal roar of terror. This was the ultimate line, the point of no return. But then I thought about my life on the Nightingale. I thought about the friendships I had made. I thought about the feeling of belonging. I thought about the face in the mirror, the reflection I was slowly, hesitantly starting to love. Who was I anymore? Was I Joey, the boy who had failed at everything? Or was I Julia, the girl who had finally found a place where she fit? The doctor's words echoed in my mind, harmonize your physical self. My decision came in a whisper, a breath of surrender and acceptance. "Okay," I said, not looking at her, but at the reflection of the woman I was becoming in the polished surface of her desk. "Let's do it." The infirmary was small, sterile, and blindingly white, lying on the operating table. I felt a fear so profound it was almost paralyzing. This was it. The final, irrevocable step. The surgeon, a specialist flown out to meet the sub at a neutral port, spoke to me in calm, reassuring tones, but his words were a distant buzz. All I could think was that when I woke up, a part of me, a fundamental part of what I had been born as, would be gone forever. Dr. Evans was there, and she held my hand as the anesthesiologist prepped my arm. "You're being very brave, Julia," she said softly. I squeezed her hand, a tear escaping the corner of my eye and tracing a path down my temple. "I'm terrified," I whispered. "I know, just breathe. It will be over before you know it." As the anesthetic entered my veins, a cold sensation spreading up my arm, my last conscious thought was of Joey. I saw his face, the sad, lost boy at the mall. I was killing him. I was letting them kill him. Then, the world dissolved into blackness. When I woke up, the first thing I registered was a dull, throbbing ache between my legs. The second was a profound sense of emptiness, a hollow feeling, both physical and emotional. It was done. The reality of it crashed down on me, and a sob escaped my lips. It grew into a full-blown cry, tears streaming down my face. I was crying for the boy I had been, for the choice I had made, for the woman I had now irrevocably become. I wasn't sure if they were tears of grief or relief. Maybe they were both. Hannah was my shadow during the recovery period. She was there when I woke up, and she rarely left my side in the days that followed. The infirmary became my world, and she was my constant, comforting presence within it. The pain was manageable with medication, but the emotional turmoil was a different story. I was prone to sudden bouts of weeping, overwhelmed by the enormity of what had happened. Hannah never judged. She would simply sit with me, sometimes holding my hand, sometimes just offering a silent presence that said, "I'm here." She helped me with everything. She brought me my meals, fluffed my pillows, and read to me from books she checked out of the ship's small library. The most intimate moments were when she helped Dr. Evans, change my surgical dressings. Her touch was professional yet tender, her voice a low, soothing murmur as she helped me clean the area. Her presence a shield against my own embarrassment and vulnerability. One afternoon, when a particularly strong wave of post-surgical pain and emotional despair washed over me, I broke down completely. Hannah didn't say a word. She just carefully climbed onto the bed beside me, wrapped her arms around me, and held me as I cried. I buried my face in her shoulder, my body shaking with sobs, and she just held me tighter, stroking my hair. "It's okay, Julia," she whispered into my ear, her voice thick with emotion. "It's going to be okay. You're not alone." In her arms, I felt safe. The warmth of her embrace was a balm to my aching body and my fractured soul. The bond between us, forged in secrecy and shared experience, deepened into something profound. She was more than a friend. She was my anchor in the storm of my own transformation. Chapter 20. Julia, officially a woman. Recovery was slow, but with each passing day, I felt stronger. As the physical pain subsided, I began to explore the new realities of my body. It was a journey of rediscovery. My movements changed. Without the physical presence I'd had my entire life, my center of gravity shifted. My walk became naturally softer, my hips swaying with an unconscious grace that I had once struggled so hard to imitate. My voice, too, settled into a different register. The hormonal shift, now uncontested by testosterone, had softened my vocal cords. My tone was lighter, my pitch naturally higher. The voice that came out of my mouth was, without question, the voice of a woman. My senses felt heightened, colors seemed brighter. The chill of the air conditioning on my bare arms felt more intense. My emotional landscape was different. Too, I was more attuned to the moods of those around me, more prone to empathy. My tears came more easily, but so did my laughter. One day, Hannah brought me a full-length mirror. I stood before it, naked. For the first time since the surgery, I saw the soft swell of my small breasts, the narrowness of my waist, the gentle curve of my hips. I saw the smooth, unbroken line of my body where there had once been something else. There was no trace of Joey left, none. The woman staring back at me was Julia, and for the first time, looking at her, I felt a sense of peace, a sense of rightness. I liked her. I liked the way her eyes shined, the way her hair fell around her shoulders. I liked the gentle strength in her posture. I was finally, completely, myself. Once I was back on my feet and cleared for duty, I settled into my life as Julia. I was happy, genuinely happy. But as the weeks turned into months, small, nagging inconsistencies began to surface, tiny cracks in the foundation of my new reality. It started with my workstation. As part of my duties, I had to log nutritional data for the crew. One day, I looked up my own file out of curiosity. I found that my dietary logs had been edited. Small, almost untraceable additions had been made to my records. Notations of dietary supplements I never remembered receiving. Then came the computer glitches. Every time I logged into my personal terminal for training modules, short, subliminal videos would flash on the screen for a fraction of a second. They were images of graceful women, clips of feminine body language, audio whispers of encouraging words like beautiful, natural, elegant. They were gone before I could fully register them, but they left a strange, lingering impression. The final piece was the most damning. I was doing a deep dive into the ship's archives for a report and stumbled upon the original crew manifest for the Nightingale project. There, under my name, was a note from recruitment. It read, "Subject selected. High suggestibility. Low self-esteem. Pre-existing interest in submersible mechanics. Ideal candidate for Protocol J." Attached was a second file, heavily encrypted. Protocol J. What was Protocol J? A cold dread began to seep into my happiness. My transformation. Dr. Evans had called it a spontaneous medical anomaly. But what if it wasn't? What if it was by design? My hands were shaking as I worked to bypass the encryption on the Protocol J file. It took me 2 days. While the program was running, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My paranoia grew. One evening, I was walking past the captain's stateroom when I heard voices from inside. The door was slightly ajar. It was Captain Bryant and Hannah. I froze, pressing myself against the cold steel bulkhead, my heart pounding. "The experiment has been a complete success," Captain Bryant was saying, her voice laced with professional satisfaction. "The final hormone readings are stable. Her testosterone levels have bottomed out exactly as the projections indicated." My blood turned to ice. Experiment projections. "She seems happier now. Donna," Hannah's voice replied, softer, more hesitant. "Living as a woman. It suits her. I think it's a good thing." "Your sentimentality is irrelevant, Hannah," the captain retorted coolly. "What matters is that Protocol J worked. We proved that with the right combination of psychological conditioning, environmental immersion, and biochemical intervention, a subject's gender identity can be completely reassigned. We took a confused boy and turned him into a perfectly functional female sailor. The applications are significant." Hannah was quiet for a moment. "Just as long as she never finds out we orchestrated the whole thing, that we programmed everything from the start, it would destroy her." The world tilted on its axis. My knees felt weak. I stumbled back from the door. My hand clamped over my mouth to stifle a scream. Programmed. Orchestrated. Every memory of the last year replayed in my mind, but now they were cast in a sickening, sinister light. I stumbled back to my workstation, my mind reeling. Hannah's words echoed in my ears. "We programmed everything." At that moment, my computer chimed. The decryption was complete, with a trembling finger. I clicked open the file for Protocol J. It was all there, page after page of cold, clinical planning. The mistake with the suitcase was no mistake. It was a calculated first step in psychological disorientation. The perfectly fitting uniform was intentional, designed to create subconscious acceptance. The water supply to my bunk and the mess hall seat I was unofficially assigned was filtered through a secondary system, one that introduced a steady, low dose of estrogen into my drinking water, the supplements in my food logs. It was all there. The subliminal videos were part of the conditioning. The crew had been briefed. Their initial hostility, followed by gradual acceptance and feminine inclusion, was all part of the script. And Hannah's role was defined as the mentor or sister figure. She had been assigned to guide me, to teach me, to win my trust, to push me along the path they had chosen for me. Every act of kindness, every reassuring word, every gentle touch, had it all been a lie, a calculated move in their sick game. The surgery wasn't a medical necessity, it was the final stage of the protocol. Dr. Evans's diagnosis was a fabrication, the hormone readings manipulated. They had pushed me to that choice. They had built this prison and convinced me I had walked into it willingly. A wave of agony and betrayal so profound, it felt like a physical blow crashed over me. They had stolen my life. They had stolen my identity. They had taken Joey Miller and sculpted him into their perfect little doll. Julia. But as I sat there, shattered, a different, more terrifying thought emerged from the wreckage, despite the lies, despite the manipulation. I was happy. I liked being Julia. I loved my life, my friends, the woman I had become. The architects of my life were monsters, but the life they had built for me was one I didn't want to give up. The conflict was, ainsi lie my soul in two. I found Hannah in our berthing, reading a book on her rack. She looked up when I approached, a warm smile on her face. The smile faltered when she saw my expression. Julia. What's wrong? You're pale as a ghost. I didn't say anything. I just placed the data slate with the open Protocol J file on her blanket. I watched as she read the title. The color drained from her face. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with panic and regret. Julia. I can explain. Can you? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, trembling with rage and hurt. Can you explain how you drugged me? How you lied to me every single day? Was any of it real? Hannah, our friendship, or was that just part of the protocol, too? Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. It started as an assignment, she whispered, her voice breaking. It did. I was just following orders. But then, I got to know you. I saw the person you were becoming. The friendship. Julia, that part was real. I swear it. You watched them destroy me, I accused, my voice rising. You helped them. No. She insisted, standing up, reaching for me. I flinched away. We didn't destroy you. We freed you. The Joey I met when you first came aboard was miserable. He was lost and insecure. He wasn't happy. Look at yourself now. You're confident. You have friends. You laugh. You're happy. Because you programmed me to be, I screamed. No, she cried, her voice raw with anguish. Because somewhere inside, that sad, lost boy, there was always a Julia waiting to come out. Maybe we pushed you through the door, and that was wrong. I know it was, but you were the one who chose to walk through it. You were the one who embraced it. This is who you are meant to be. Her words hit me with the force of truth. I hated the way I got here. I hated them for their lies and manipulation. But I couldn't deny the result. I couldn't deny my own happiness. The anger drained out of me, leaving behind a deep, aching sorrow. I looked at Hannah, my friend, my betrayer, my sister. I saw the genuine remorse in her tear-streaked face. My own tears started to fall. I stumbled forward, and we collapsed into each other's arms, both of us sobbing for the lies, for the truth, and for the strange, twisted path that had led us to this moment. A week later, the USS Nightingale docked for a 2-week shore leave. My confrontation with Hannah had been followed by a tense, difficult meeting with Captain Bryant. I didn't threaten to expose them. What would be the point? It wouldn't bring Joey back, and I didn't want him back. Instead, I secured a guarantee: no more lies, no more manipulations. From now on, my life was my own. Hannah and I were getting ready to leave the submarine, heading to a small seaside hotel for a few days. Our friendship was bruised and scarred, but it was healing. It was real. I stood in front of the mirror in our small cabin, adjusting the collar of my simple blue sundress. I was meeting Hannah for our first official shore leave, our first real date. I picked up a tube of lipstick, a bright, confident cherry red. As I carefully applied it, I met my own eyes in the reflection. The past year had been a maelstrom of confusion, humiliation, and deception. I hadn't chosen this path. I had been pushed, guided, and manipulated onto it every step of the way. They may have led me here. They may have created the circumstances. But the person I was now, the choices I would make from this day forward, those were mine. I finished with my lipstick, pressed my lips together, and smiled. It was a genuine smile, reaching all the way to my eyes. Maybe I was led here, I whispered to the woman in the mirror, but now, I'm choosing to live this way. With a final satisfied glance, Julia Miller turned from the mirror and walked out the door to begin her new life.